Let's go now to the Tzemach Tzedek, page 14. The problem is, he says almost nothing. He literally says almost nothing. You have two arrows on page 14. Now, the lines that you see right at the top of the page to the bottom of the page, those are rays of Ein Sof that have to do with a deficient copy machine. Okay? If you don't know how to read them, don't worry. You're normal. They're absolutely meaningless. The copy machine was not behaving. You have an arrow on the right side of your page, and you have an arrow on the left side of your page. Let me quickly repeat to you now what I told you at the beginning of today's class, because I took it from the Tzemach Tzedek. I'm going to give you an alternative model. I'm going to give you a different way of saying what I said to you when the class began. Okay? Everybody knows that a Sefer Torah is a white piece of parchment and black letters. Right? Brilliant. With an emphasis, with a priority, with a diuk. The black letters of the Sefer Torah are mukaf gavil. They're surrounded by white. The letters are touching, not kosher. Every letter must have its own self-contained space surrounded by whiteness. Right? Now, how do you make a physical Sefer Torah? I don't know. You write a check. I say make a physical Sefer Torah. I guess a big check, but that's what it is. Someone has to actually make the parchment and prepare it. It's a lot of work, and it's a special skill, and it's a technique. Someone has to make the ink, which is another skill, and the technique has to be kosher. Right? The din is that the Laman Tia Teres Adeshem Beficha. The Gemara learns that the minim, the material that you use to make Sefer Torah, the film zuzah, has to be mutadam beficha, has to be edible, has to be kosher. You can't use treif. It doesn't have to be something that you can actually eat, but it theoretically has to be from a kosher species. As I state in Parshas, from the Gemara, the halacha. But in any case, you take a white piece of parchment. I'm sorry?
Where it's from?
From an animal skin. Oh, the ink is made from different materials. Some of it is herb, some of it is ash, some of it is different stuff. I don't know. I buy it in the store. The painted film. Again, for money you can get any. The mitzvahs are packaged, sealed, and delivered.
That's why we need a shulchan.
Huh?
That's why we need a shulchan.
That's why we need a shulchan, right? It's like I'm saying, how does chicken come? What do you mean? In cellophane with plastic. That's how shulchan
No,
comes.
everything has to be from a kosher animal.
The ink and the yes.
The ink too.
Yes, of course. The ink and the
That's why we
parchment.
need the money.
From the shulchan, yeah, and a lot of money.
Okay.
Lamata masalat fach. In any case, we have all the other brachas too, not just money.
Interesting that we're learning this from Rabbi to connect Adar to
Ashiris.
Yeah.
Parshas Terumah. Parshas and Beis. Very good. Now, so how do you make a Sefer Torah? You prepare parchment and you take ink. You put the ink on the parchment, and tada, you have a Sefer Torah, right? But the Chazal tell us, it's mentioned in Chumash of Zaycha Bracha, that before Hashem created the world, He had a Sefer Torah. And the divine Sefer Torah was Eish Shechoyra al Gabi Eish Levana. It was black fire superimposed on white fire. That's how it's described. Right? Recall? Thanks for nodding, I appreciate it. Now, according to Hasidus and Kabbalah, black fire is lower than white fire. Okay? What's the proof that black fire is lower than white fire? Look at a candle, and you'll notice that the place where the flame meets the wick is the darkest. And as the flame gradually distances itself from the physical wick, it becomes a lighter and lighter color until it becomes invisible. Chassidus explains this to me. It's called Nahoira Uchma, Nahoira Chivra. Black fire and white fire, and then there's the Nahoira Kuchla, there's red fire, and there's blue fire. There's a lot of discussions in Maimonides of Chanukah and Teira'id about different kinds of fire and so forth. Okay, what's the principle? The principle is very simple. Fire is a spiritual thing. Fire is a spiritual thing. I'm turning this over, I figure, yes? Its connection to the physical world has to do with physical substances other than fire. You can't have fire without fuel. You must. When fire is being held by fuel, it's also consuming the fuel. It's eating it up. It's eating up the oil, it's eating up the wick, right? It's consuming it. And the reward that the fire gives us for eating up the fuel is that it gives us light, and it gives us warmth, and it gives us all the wonderful things that fire provides. Correct? So the idea is that in order to have fire in the physical world, you have to bring the fire down to have a connection with the physical level. Or to say it in slightly different words, there's an act of beta. The fire is correcting the physical world. So the part of the fire closest to the wick means it has the greatest connection to the Gashmias. The part of the fire farthest from the wick means it's the most ideal. It's the closest to the truth until there's a level of the fire which you don't see at all. So black fire is considered a lower level than white fire. So Chassidus tells us, based on Kabbalah, that before the Eibishter created the world, he made a Sefer Torah. Okay? The Sefer Torah was white fire and black letters. Black fire. With one tiny distinction between his Sefer Torah and our Sefer Torah. He didn't get himself a quill and ink and put the black fire of the white fire. The black fire came from the white fire. The white fire represents infinite whiteness. The Sefer Torah is one canvas, one long piece of parchment that says what? Everything and nothing all at the same time. It's like a blank piece of paper. Yeah? What does a blank piece of paper say? Nothing and whatever you want it to say. The moment you put words on it, it says one thing to the exclusion of everything else. So long as you haven't put any words on it, it says everything at the same time. But a piece of paper is only a piece of paper. The white Sefer Torah represents Ein Sof. Infinite plainness of the Eibishter, which is the greatest gift Hashem could give us with one tiny technical detail. What is that? From Hashem's infinite plain Ein Sof, we have absolutely nothing. Because we're not infinite and plain and Ein Sof. We're finite and complicated, to put it mildly. And Yesh Sof, correct? So Klayachal, the Eibishter, contracts his infinite fire with a defined fire. The black letters of the Torah represent that tzimtzum, so to speak, a contraction of the infinite whiteness of the fire, which is the pnimius of the Torah, so that we should actually get something from the Sefer Torah. Those are the black letters of the Sefer Torah. The black letters of the Sefer Torah are also light, also fire, they're also holiness, they're also Ein Sof. But they reveal the Torah to us in a way that we could get it and hear it by limiting it. That's the concept of each letter having its own space. It's a limited us, it's a limited fire, which actually reveals something to us. So the black fire reveals to us the white fire by actually concealing. The white fire is a higher level, but it's such a high level that it's useless. The black fire, superimposed on the white fire, brings to us the white fire through a process of tzimtzum, through a process of contraction. You got the picture? This is called, in other words, Mamala Kalaman, from Sevav Kalaman. The infinite light of Hashem is the greatest thing in the world, but the infinite light of Hashem is useless to us because we can't relate to infinity. So Kavayochel, there has to be a contraction, a tzimtzum. The infinite light of Hashem has to be contained in something finite that should be able to reach us. You follow? So the Maimah says, what I told you 40 minutes ago, that the walls and the roof of the Beis HaMikdash represent the white fire. The infinite light of Hashem that is every bracha in one continuous achdus, plainness, which means it's the greatest thing in the world and absolutely useless to us. But inside the walls and the roof were the vessels. The vessels would come to represent, in effect, black lights. It's less, but it's useful. And the oisius, the individual kelim of the Beis HaMikdash, which are called Oir Pnimi, Mamala Kalam, and the limited light of Elokus, so to speak, allows for us to actually gain something from the bracha of the Eibishter. But understand that the point of it is that through those vessels, through the black light, we should have a connection to the infinite. Through the black letters of the Sefer Torah, we should have a connection to the whiteness of the Sefer Torah. Similarly, the vessels of the Beis HaMikdash translated the infinite blessing, the infinite possibility that the Beis HaMikdash's walls and roof have into distinct and limited forms to give us access not just to the distinct and limited ideas that were blessing the world in the Beis HaMikdash, but through them to have a connection to the infinity that's represented by the ideas. You follow? Okay, that's what he says. So the Maimer goes into red and blue and purple and white and explains that this is called Chaktam. You know what Chaktam is? It's a code. It's Chesed Gevur Tiferes Malchus. Don't get excited. And he connects it to the Shulchan and the Meneda and the Mizbeach and the Mizbeach. Okay? We're not interested in the whole speech. We're interested just in the Shulchan. And he says two things about the Shulchan.
Since you mentioned it, can you just mention how do they correspond?
Oh, I don't know. Take out the Maimer. Ich habe schon vergessen. I did it this morning, but many hours passed and a lot of things occurred. And I have, it's called short-term memory loss. I live in the present, so I forget everything before. Short-term memory loss. A little while passes, I forget. Take out the Derech Mitzvah and learn it. It's not such a difficult Maimer. It's a nice Maimer. And learn it. But we're going to read two commentaries about the Shulchan. One is going to be on page 172, and the other one is going to be on page Pezayin. The distinction between these two commentaries is simple. The first one is explaining what the Shulchan represented in the Beis Hamikdash. The second one is going to describe what the Shulchan represents now that the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed. Okay? And I'm going to teach it to you, and you're going to tell me what it means. Okay? 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 So if you look at the right side of your page, he says like this, V'Shulchan b'Tzaf. The Shulchan was in the north. The north. Right? We know a lot of stuff. Page 14. How do you say it? Stirnitzitz. Stirnitzitz. Not bad, huh? Not bad for a Yankee. Okay. Okay. The Shulchan b'Tzafein, the Shulchan was in the north. B'chinas rishpei eish ha'ahava, says the Tzemach Tzedek. The Shulchan which is in the north, which you now and I know, we all know by now, represents Gevura, is rishpei eish. Rishpei eish means fire attached to coals. The connotation, of course, is it's heat. It's very intense, of ha'ava, to loving the Eibishter. Shehi, that this level of love, which is associated with fire, is Kamal Sazav al-Akasat, as the advantage of gold over silver. For those who don't know, that's Tanya chapter 50, look it up and tell me what it means. Okay? Shanim sheches megavura datzilos, which emanates, which radiates from the gavuras of Atzilos, umisham boim kol ha'ashpois, from which all blessings come. Kidu, as it is known, being gavuras geshamim, the strength of rain. Strength of rain is what? There's two definitions. The strength of rain is Hashem gives us infinitely, gives us rain with strength. And the strength of rain means He condenses the rain into droplets that shouldn't flood the earth. So which one does He mean here? Which one does He mean here? The Gevuras that's containing, or the Gevuras that's giving an overflowing way? That's what the Rebbe was on the table, because represents Parnasa. So the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, was generous enough. He offered us 2 lines and 2 words of commentary on the Shulchan. Look at the Beneida. They got 5 words all told. So don't complain. I'm sorry. So what is it? The Shulchan represents Ahava, not Yira. But an intense Ahava, an overflowing Ahava, an infinite Ahava, as is the advantage of fire, gold over silver, fire, Gvura over Chesed, strength over natural kindness, right? And he connects it to Panos. Now, go to the other side of the page, reading another version of the Shulchan, but this is assuming the Beis Hamikdash has been destroyed, the lights have gone out, right? For those who like fancy language, Kutchabrichu has gone away. What was the Beis Hamikdash like?
Elements.
Huh?
Elements.
What was the Beis Hamikdash? Beis Hamikdash was a house where the Shechina was revealed. The Shechina was revealed. What does the word Shechina mean? Huh?
Holiness.
Manifestation. Shechina means that godliness rests.
God's presence.
Huh?
God's presence.
Well, that's a colloquial definition. It's an imprecise. The word Shechina means to rest. So the kus that rests. But because the Shechina was begilui in the Beis Hamikdash, Kutchabrichu came down also. HaKadosh Baruch Hu came down as well. So the Beis Hamikdash was a place that because the Shechina was revealed, he attracted, to be short, she attracted Kutchabrichu, the masculine aspect of godliness that was revealed in the Beis Hamikdash. What happens when the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed? The building is gone, Kutchabrichu disappears, and Shechina goes into Galus. Sound familiar? Dalut HaShechina. The level of godliness which is manifest is still manifest, but is not revealed. Because the level of godliness which is manifest is not revealed, the level of godliness which is removed ascends. Now let's find out the function of the Shulchan in the times of Galus. Okay? Left side of the page, Pezayin, and the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek is very generous. He gives us 4 whole words of explanation. V'Shulchan b'Tzafim b'chinas Yira. The Shulchan is on the left, in the north. It's the aspect of fear. Okay. I'll make sense out of it, please.
Life is simple.
Life is simple? Amen. Okay. So you see what the Rebbe does? Do you see what's flying? You see what's going on? Anybody see what's going on? He's talking about the same Shulchan, same table, right? The constant is, this Shulchan is Gevura, this Shulchan is Gevura, but one he calls infinite love, and the other one he calls fear. Why? Why? My proposal, since you're not offering yours, and the clock is moving, If you want to speak, go right ahead. This is your opportunity to take over the class. Don't you dare, no. My proposal is that we just learned that Rabbeinu B'chaya, and we just learned a Rikanti, and we flew through a Shalah that told us one constant. There's two Gevuras. There's a higher Gevur and a lower Gevur, right? Now we get to the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek says there's a Shulchan Tam of the Beis HaMikdash and the Shulchan now. The difference is very plain. The Shulchan Tam of the Beis HaMikdash had both dimensions of Gevura. The Shulchan now only has the lower one. The higher one is gone. And the difference is enormous. The higher level of Shulchan is called Tzafon. Godliness is concealed. It's called Mizgeres, the concentrated, deeper, higher levels of Elokus, which is not containing and contracting, but so infinite that all it wants to do is give and give and give and give, right? The lower Gevura has to package that Bli Gevul, that infinity, in a form that we're able to access it. In the time of the Beis HaMikdash, the higher Gevura and the lower Gevura were linked. You want to blame it on the Shulchan and the Mizgeres? Go right ahead. You want to blame it on the blue or the red? Go right ahead. I don't care what. This is the idea, right? Just like the Aron has a Kapoides, a lower level and a higher level, which I suppose at this point we'll call Shechina and Kodesh B'richu, so in the Shulchan, time of Gauls, is just Yirah. The secondary component, Yirah means fear. Fear means humility. Fear means acceptance. And I suppose you could say it means not so abundant, not so generous. The Shulchan, time of the Beis HaMikdash, is love. Love. Infinite love. Because when love is based on kindness alone, it's soft, it's like water, as I told you half an hour ago, right? But when the love has Gevura, it's infinite love. So the Tzemach Tzedek is actually giving us a real insight into what we're missing by not having the Beis HaMikdash. We have the concept of the Shulchan, but the physical presence of the physical Beis HaMikdash, which, so to speak, invited the Shechina, right? Changed the nature of the Gevura of the Shulchan from being containment and concealment to generosity and effervescence, overflowing. You follow? Sounds good? And if it's true, it'll be even better. Okay? So far, so good? Now goes... Anybody want to say anything? Everyone's very well behaved, which is not such a good sign, by the way.
Is there any way to access that higher level now?
Yes. Okay, now you're asking the great question. Does that mean we have no connection to the high level? And I'm going to go straight to the point. The answer is l'chalchila riber, mesiras nefesh. What the Beis HaMikdash provided was access to the higher level in the framework of normalcy, of Adam, of Atzilus, limitation. The higher level has departed, but it's available to us through a navodah of mesiras nefesh. We're going into Adar. Tonight says Chedesh. If you didn't have Marivya, don't forget Yalav Yava. If you didn't say Yalav Yava, you can't have him again. Purim. Let's do it, Purim. Hashem is asleep. And his sleep is stirred. Right? But that night, the king sleep was stirred. And of course, Chassidus says the king doesn't mean Achashverosh, it means the Rebishter. So how does the Maimon explain it? He's still sleeping and he's disturbed. Not he's woken up. In Pshuta Shal Mikra, Balaylahu, no, the Shal Achashverosh cannot sleep. How does Chassidus explain it? He's still asleep and his sleep is being stirred. You understand? So how would you explain in Chassidus? Sleep means a world of Einitar Yudei Adma. Sleep means a world where you cannot explain the hand of God in life. Awakenedness would mean that you could see clear hashgacha. Tzaddikim are rewarded and the Shoyim are punished. There's reason to the order of creation. That's called awakenedness. The story of Purim is Hashem was still sleeping and he was awake. What does that mean? The concealment of godliness continued. Persia went on being Persia. Achashverosh went on being a fool. Haman went on being cruel. And God was running the world. There was no revealed miracle. Hashem didn't just make a flood or make blood and frogs and lice and wild animals and boils and all kinds of other stuff. Fix Achashverosh and Haman. They still think they're in charge. And the Eibush is working them like puppets. So according to Kabbalah, the way you would say it is, there's three levels. There's Malchus, there's Atzilus, and there's Atik. Okay, in time of the Beis HaMikdash, the higher Gevurus is in Atzilus. in its place. In times of Golus, it's an Atik. In the story of Purim, Atzilus wasn't functioning. The lowest level was functioning, the Ein Sof level was functioning, but the middle level, the level what we call Gili, revelation, was not present. So the Eibush is awake in the middle of his sleep. So it's a different concept, but the end is the same. You could reach the higher Gevurus, but it doesn't come down in a way of Gili, it comes down in a way of extreme, in Blikvul. Does that help a little?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Now, we're out of time and we're not out of material. So what's new? The last 2 pages is a minor. And I must be honest with you, every week when I prepare the class, I usually try to research what I'm going to have the easiest time teaching. In other words, I usually start looking for a minor. I find a minor on a topic and then I work backwards. In this case, I decided I'm teaching the Shulchan. Finished. I'm teaching the table. Why? Because I taught the Adam a couple of years ago and I want to teach the Shulchan. Then I started looking for material and it wasn't so much fun. I had a special difficulty when I got to the Maimer. I couldn't find a single Maimer from the Rebbe, a single Maimer from the Frierdiker Rebbe who talked about the Shulchan. I found one Maimer from the Rebbe Rashab, which as it turns out is based on the Eilat Teretz and Tzedek. And it doesn't talk about the Shulchan, it talks about the Mizgeres, about the girdle. And I had to learn 15 pages of Maimer. Literally, I had to make some passports. I stood in the passport office an hour and learned through this Maimer. You notice you get from Kuf Mamches to Kuf Samach Beis on the same sheet. I had to go through the whole Maimer. How do I tell this to you? This is quite a Maimer. Quite a Maimer. The Maimer makes the following observation. See if you can hang in with me, okay? If I confuse you, tell me. I'll repeat myself. I want to do this quickly, but I also want to be clear. Okay? The Rebbe Rashab says the table has 4 relevant components. 4. Piat. Okay? 4 relevant components.
4 chetiri.
4 means chetiri, right? Chetiri means 4. Oh, I said piat. Piat is 5. You see, I'm verschlafen. Okay, after 11 o'clock, everything gets taste. No, thank you for the corrections. Okay, I don't mind. I would actually test. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, arrogance does have a limit. Sometimes for some people. But okay. Now, he focuses on 4 points. There's many other aspects. 4 points. The table itself, the girdle, the mizgeres, the rings, the 4 legs had 4 rings attached to them, and the badim, the poles that ran through them. And the essence of what he says about the table is, you know already that the point of the vessels in the Beis HaMikdash was to give us a bracha, to give us a blessing, to give us a flow of goodness, right? But in order for it to reach us, it has to be limited, as is represented by the black letters in the Sefer Torah we spoke about 5 minutes ago, right? So the Shulchan represents godliness in containment, limited. But the purpose is that through the table, you should have a connection to something which is truly infinite, right? The infinite is represented by the Mizgeres. By the Mizgeres means concealment, the hiddenness, the godliness that's transcendent. Okay? Now, how do you go from the finite to the infinite? That's a great question. And the answer is the rings, tabois. The rings. Now, how does a ring get you from something finite to something infinite? Well, it's called marriage. No, just kidding. Okay. How do you go from something finite? How does the ring represent going from something finite to something from something which is finite to connect to something which is infinite? So he gives you a long discussion about malachim. And the long discussion goes like this. I'll try to make it short, okay? In Kabbalah, there are 2 words. Igulim and Yoisher. Igulim means a circle. Yoisher means a line. Okay? Igulim, the circle, is representative of the infinite. A circle is representative of Bligvul Ein Sof. Why? A circle has no middle, no beginning, and an end, right? A line has a distinct top and a middle and a bottom. Especially, of course, when you decorate a line and say it's not 1 line, it's actually 3 lines. A right and a left and a center, top and a middle and a bottom. Correct? Basic Kabbalah. Kabbalah 101, everyone here is an expert, naturally. So the circle represents Ein Sof, and the line represents order, infinity, and detail. So which is higher? Obviously, the circle is higher than the line, right? Sounds right? Anybody disagree? Any objections here? Everybody seems to be in agreement, okay? Sorry?
You said at the beginning the light is more concrete in terms of the hashpah on the...
Availability to us, correct? Nachon, richtig.
Circle represent what?
Ein Sof.
Oh.
A circle has no middle, no beginning, and no end. It's infinite. A line has distinct components, represents limitation. Now, here's the problem. The problem is that it says in the Kisvei HaArizal that Igulim is from Nefesh and Yesher is from Ruach. Now it says in Arizal's writings that the line has a higher source than the circle. Problem. That in other words, that something finite is actually higher in its source than something infinite. Okay? Now, how does that work? It's very, very complicated. It's very, very complicated and very, very, very involved. But this is the avodah explanation. This is how he explains it in Avodas Hashem. How do you do something finite and how do you do something infinite? Practically speaking. What does it mean practically to do something finite? What does it mean practically to do something infinite? So he gives you a mashal. There were angels. There were angels called Eifanim. Does anybody know Hebrew? What does Eifan mean? A wheel. That's right. It means a wheel. It means eagle. The lowest level of malachim are circles. Okay? Exactly how large the circles are, I don't know. Okay? Then the malachim called Srafim and Chayes. Srafim and Chayes talk. The Eifanim shout. The Srafim and Chayes reason. The Eifanim shout. According to Kabbalah, the higher malachim are more reasonable, are more measured. The lowest level of malachim shouts. You know why he's shouting? You know why he's shouting?
Screaming?
Screaming.
Oh.
You know why he's screaming? Because he doesn't understand. When you understand, you don't scream, you reason. The more sophisticated malachim are reasonable. The simple malach screams. So it says in Siddur, they go even higher than this. In other words, like this. Shouting is not very sophisticated. Learning and reasoning is far more sophisticated. But shouting gets to the essence. Shouting gets to the core. Right? I'm not saying we should walk through the streets and shout. Not a good idea. But in Avodas Hashem, in the model of service to Eibishter, the intensity of tshuva may not be so fancy and so sophisticated, but it's powerful. Correct? So the Maimer says the circle represents the Ein Sof. Ein Sof means underdeveloped, not mature, not opened up, not detailed, a point, an essence. The reason I'm screaming is because I don't understand, but my disadvantage becomes my advantage. I'm screaming, and I'm reaching something infinite. And that's what the shape of a ring is. By the way, this is reason that Kabbalah by a chuppah, the ring is supposed to be round. It has to do with this issue. In a good way, not in a bad way. Okay? So you have a circle and a line. The line is limited. But the line actually represents understanding and detail and development. The circle represents infinity. But what does infinity mean? Infinity is called katnus, unterentwickelt. It's not developed. There is no detail. There's just a raw cry. And the simple raw cry has an ability to reach something which is transcendent, totally infinite. So he explains, the Rabbi does, the Maimer does as follows. The table represents limited gevuras, finite gevuras, okay? The mizgeres, the so-called girdle of the table, represents the concealed Ein Sof, which is inaccessible and unavailable. The bridge between the finite gevuras, which is measured and available to us, and the infinite gevuras, which is concealed, is the rings, is the shout. The way one can bring higher gevuras, infinite blessings of the Eibishter, in the form of gevuras, down into our finite world, to our finite lives, is through the avodah of tshuva, through this so-called shout. This is what the Maimer is saying, more or less. And I'll tell you what I want you to do for me. I want you to look on page 16 near the bottom. Or let's, you know what? 16. The last page. At the very top of the last page, you have the rays of the Ein Sof blackening out the words. But this right here. Over here, right here on top. You see? He says, Shulchan hu bechinas memale kalam. And the table is representative of the limited light of godliness which the Eibishter gives us. Because you see it? Turn over. There we go. Right there. The Shulchan Moed al Hashpa, the table means Hashem gives. And gives means what we can get. If Hashem gives us too much, He's given us absolutely nothing. Vu bechinas chayis, it's life. Umazn, and sustenance. Ha'olamus of the worlds, v'hanivroim, and the creations, shebechinas malaklam v'chuli, which is measured and limited. And that's good. Why is measured and limited good? Because it's useful. Utzrichim lasses as a shulchan. You want to lift the table up. La'alis, to ascend. So bechinas mamalakalam v'seibakalam. The finite light, what we call before the black light, should access the higher light, the white light. Okay? V'shiyeh gilui, there should be a revelation of bechinas seivev b'malakalam v'chuli, the higher light and the lower light. And the higher light is the mizgeres, is the girdle, the sagur, the tzafun, the concealed infinite, deeper gevuras of the table. So the constant is, the table is gevura, every kind of gevura. Higher gevura, which is intense concentration of godliness, and lower gevura, which is a limiting, restraining technique and mechanism to give us what we're able to receive. But you want to link the lower gevuras to the higher gevuras. The higher gevuras is the mizgeres, the lower gevuras is the shulchan itself, and the link is the rings. It says the Rebbe you want to link it to the rings and to the arms, the badim. The badim is a whole nother situation, which I don't know if I want to get into, but let's talk about the rings. Okay? He said, the rings are constantly on the table. Okay? Skip 2 lines, please. I'm deliberately skipping something. Okay? Avol hatabohes. You see hatabohes? It's 6 lines in the top of the page. I underlined it. However, the ring, shein bechinas nihi, is the lowest level. You see, but the lowest level has that raw cry quality to it. Yochali is tamid, it's able to be all the time. And when a Jew cries, screams out, he creates a possibility to connect to his finite blessing, to his finite access, to his finite possession, something which is transcendent, something which is infinite. In other words, how do you bring into a limited person something infinite through an act of tshuva, through an act of going out of your own limitation, which is represented by the tabois, represented by the rings. So this maimed is, so to speak, enhancing what we learned before in the Rikanti, in the Rebbeinu B'chaya and the Rikanti. We're in Chodesh Adar. We're close enough to put him. Right? 4 weeks away, 2 weeks away, 6 weeks away, whatever it is. Anyway. Chassidus has, of course, a mystical version of the Purim story. And to put it mildly, the mystical version of the Purim story is quite different from the actual one. One of the most frequently recited Maimorim on Purim is the Maimor called Yaviu Levush Malchus. It's found originally in Teira 8, and then it's in Shadayeda. The Rabbi all talked about Yaviu Levush Malchus. It's the exchange between Haman and Achashverosh, where Achashverosh says to Haman, "What do you think I should do to a person who I wish to honor?" And of course Haman says, "Well, let's get the king's crown, let's get the king's horse, let's get the king's cape." Cape is the right word? And we'll dress him up. Of course Haman is thinking it's all going to happen to him, and then of course it happens to Mordechai. So the pasuk describes it as Ish asher hamelech hafez b'kareh. Somebody who the king wishes to honor, Yaviu levush malchus, ashlovish v'amelech, should bring the garment of the king, the cape, v'sus, and the horse, v'ashanitin kesem malchus b'resh, and the crown. So the next pasuk says, "Vayomer Achashverosh el Haman," says the Achashverosh Haman, "Mahe, go ahead quickly, kachas halavush v'esasos, take the cape and take the horse, v'asei kain leMordechai Yehudi, do it to Mordechai Yehudi." The crown disappears. Haman proposes 3 things, and Achashverosh tells Haman, "You go bring Mordechai the cape and the horse." Of course, the Pshutish Shalmika, the story is, the moment Haman mentioned crown, Achashverosh became extremely paranoid. Because the crown belongs to one. Period. You understand? So Achashverosh says, well, I like your idea, but no one's wearing the crown except me. But Chassidus has a whole nother version of the story. The Chassidus version of the story is based on the assumption, which is of course classic Chassidus, that Klippa has a higher source than Kedusha. Klippa comes from Torah. Remember the whole idea that Klippa has infinite source and all that other stuff. You learned about it. Everyone here is a big Kabbalist, right? At 11:15 at night, we're for sure Kabbalists. Because reason we can't do, but we might as well be Kabbalists. So Klippa has a higher source, infinite source. The horse and the cape represent Makifim. They represent infinite lights. A cape represents infinite light because it's a garment. It encompasses. And a sus, also sus is 2 times sag, 2 times 63, which is the day of gas, which is gaiva, kigoy, go. Don't worry, it's very exciting. Just take my word for it, that the horse and the cape represent keser. Klippa has easier access to keser than Kedusha does. Achashverosh is God. Haman is Makifim, is the infinite lights of the Eibishter. And Mordechai is a Yid. He's limited. But he's godliness as a line, not as a circle. He's godliness with a focus. And Haman, Makifim, Keser, is going to add to Mordechai, is going to add to a Yid whose Avodas Hashem is limited and revealed, infinite lights. So he says to the Eibishter, give me the crown, and give me the horse, and give me the cape, give me all the infinite lights, and I'll give them to Mordechai. So Chassidus is a very interesting thing. There's infinite lights, sure. There's infinite lights. Infinite lights have an easier, more accessible to Klippa than they are to Kedusha. In the language of tonight's class, infinite lights are accessible through shouting, not through being reasonable. Even though shouting is so primitive, it's so elemental, it's so low, but there's something a lot of integrity in a shout, so you reach Makif. You understand? So the infinite lights are available to Haman, and Haman is going to bring him to Achashverosh. But there's something called the essence. The crown. The essence belongs to nobody except for the Jew. It may be true that Toyu is higher than Tikkun, that Haman is higher than Mordechai, or to use the language of the Parshas Shavua, that Pare is higher than Moshe, that Sevav Kalaman is higher than Malach Kalaman, that Mordechai needs Haman to give him the higher lights. But the essence, which is the crown, was never taken from the Jew. It belongs only to the Yid. So Haman says to Achashverosh, he says to the Eibishter, give me the cape and the horse and the crown, give me infinite lights and I'll bring them to the Jew. I'll enhance Yiddishkeit. So Hashem says, great idea. But he doesn't need the crown from you. The crown is his.
You want to be a Sharia?
Huh? We don't need your help. Right, we don't need your help. Why am I telling this to you? Because the Maimeh is describing what? The SHULCHAN represents the limited form, the Gevuras that we can benefit from. We want to connect to infinite Gevuras. The Bli Gevur, the infinite Gevuras is called the Mizgeres. Mizgeres Lashon Sagur, Tzafun, locked away. And the key to the link between the SHULCHAN and the Mizgeres is the Tabois, the rings, which is a circle, which represents something very simple, but something infinite at the same time, and that links the finite to the infinite, right? Inside the rings, they were badim, poles. The poles helped us carry the table, okay? The word badim means poles. When I went to Chedim, and Malamed translated them as Steingen. What's Steingen? Poles. What's poles? Steingen. What's Steingen? Poles. You understand? I have no idea what Steingen means. Steingen means sticks. Huh? It's Yiddish, of course it's Yiddish. But Chassidus is a gewaltige Zach. The word badim, the root is the word bad, alone. Like Eicha Yoshva Bodad, right? Adishem Bodad Yanchenu. Bad means alone. And like it says when you get to the linen garments of Yom Kippur, Bad Bevad Yihi, alone. It says this Maimer. There is the finite and there's the infinite and there's the link between them. And then there's Badim. This is the connection between Yidden and the Eibishter. It's a whole other situation. The Maimer explains in detail how you could access even the badim. But I would put it to you in these words. If the shulchan is representative of Achashverosh, then the mizgeres, the infinite light, is representative of the horse and the cape. And the rings would, I suppose, be Haman. The crown, this is the badim. That's as much as I'm going to share. The rest you can break your head on. Okay?